Welcome to The Great Awakening. I'm your host, Josh Stotts. My guest today is Wade Stotts. He is the host of The Wade Show on YouTube and Canon Plus. It's a great show where he does cultural commentary, fun little short videos where he has a lot of fun, a lot of irreverent humor, poking fun at current events and in a fun and informative way. So he's had some great videos recently, kind of introducing some concepts from the dissident right, which is kind of been a topic of conversation, a space, an ideological space that I've been interested in and learning a lot from the last couple of years. And so I wanted to have him on to talk about how we should think about rethinking long-held positions. Obviously, there are, biblical truths that we want to hold tightly to, and we don't want to deconstruct that. But there's a lot of ideas that we grow up with that we just assume are true that may or may not be. And how should we go about rethinking those ideas or re-examining new ideas that maybe challenge some of our preconceptions? So I wanted to have Wade on to talk about that. We had a great conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So let's jump right into that conversation with Wade. Hey, Wade, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
All right. Can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what The Wade Show is?
Yeah. So weekly, I do something called The Wade Show with Wade. I've stepped up to doing 2 videos a week now, but basically what I try to do is once or twice a week, talk about what's going on in the world and try to do it kind of in a, sort of Jon Stewart meets right-wing posting sort of approach. But it's very fun. It's we have a lot of fun. Typically, I either hit something, run through the headlines of kind of what's happened that week, or jump into a particular kind of right-wing political topic. So it's a lot of fun for me. I hope it's fun for other folks.
Yeah, well, I was telling you before that this is you're the first guest that my kids are excited about me having on. I think I started seeing some of your stuff online. I think when you first started doing that. But the thing that really caught their eye is they on the Canon Plus app saw your video on Taylor Swift, and was a great just kind of lampooning the TGC article about how Taylor Swift brings us the gospel or something.
Yeah.
That was wild. So they've been, that was crazy. But they've been big fans since then. And you don't just cover the news though. You introduce some really, I think, important topics. And that's what I wanted to have you on about. Because you're starting to introduce a lot of ideas like anarcho tyranny, and things, different ways of thinking about democracy or equality, and a lot of things that we've kind of taken for granted. And I know there's a lot of sensitivity within evangelical circles about not wanting to go woke on the to the left, but we got to watch out for dangers on the right too. And I saw a tweet this past week about telling people check out people's tweets from 2 years ago, and you can see how fast radicalization happens. And that just got me thinking that not all radicalization is bad. In a world where wickedness is the norm, maybe some radical ideas should be entertained. But you do a good job of bringing in a lot of these ideas. And I wanted to talk to you about how can we go about rethinking some things that we've held. So maybe let's start there. Like, how did you a lot of your ideas that you're promoting on the show come from what has been called the dissident right. How did you kind of start exploring these ideas for yourself?
Well, it's the dissident right. It depends on, I guess. I'm probably not the best person to define what the dissident right is, but how I kind of stumbled into it was I am used to reading conservatives or right wingers that are saying things that may not pass well at a TPUSA or at a sort of a CPAC kind of audience. And so I was somewhat familiar with some of the names in there, but I think over the past, I think it was 3 or 4 years have been comfortable like reading some of the older paleo conservatives, some of the guys who used to be at National Review, some of the guys that kind of and some of the people who got kicked kind of out of American conservatism. So I started reading a lot of those guys through people like Aaron McIntyre, through people like Academic Agent on YouTube, and just people I've enjoyed their content. And I say this all the time, but that they're much more in the academic sphere and they're so comfortable there. And I'm not that guy, but I enjoy that work. So really, what I do on the show or what I do in my videos is I try to talk about those things in a way that I can. So this is kind of the only content I really know how to make is more lighthearted, more entertainment content, but is still trying to push in the direction of saying things that are teaching people things that are important and learning things myself. Because really, I've heard somebody say a long time ago that writing is thinking. And so typically when I'm writing this stuff, it is me thinking through it and me trying to put it into words, the things that I've learned from other people. So you mentioned the anarcho-tyranny episode. I was basically just summarizing and applying Sam Francis's article from 1994 called Anarcho-Tyranny USA. And yeah, I think that we've got within the kind of right-wing sphere, we've got a lot of people who are in the academic world, and I appreciate that. And a lot of people who are doing like 3-hour streams and debates and back and forths and reviews of old blog articles. And I love that stuff. So I'm more of a consumer of that. And so this is just me trying to participate in, like I said, the only way I really know how.
Well, it's so needed. Another guest I've had, Jamie Bambrick,
Okay.
does similar kind of videos from Northern Ireland there. And
Cool.
I think that's such an important piece of I think the conservative world that we seem to miss a lot of times. There are, a ton of 3-hour streams that no one in my church is going to listen to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to kind of bridge that gap a little
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Yeah.
But I think content like yours is just so important to help get a lot of these ideas out. Now, as Christians, as we, explore this, what do we need to hold on to as we start, re-examining some of our priors?
Well, so the tweet you mentioned earlier about, radicalization happening fast. I totally, first I would just want to say, I totally understand the hesitance. So like, imagine if there was a guy you knew who was super into this girl and was like ring shopping and was all excited, couldn't stop talking about how great she was. And then you meet him a month later and talk to him and, and then you say, hey, how are things going with so-and-so? And he says, oh, she's awful. Now I've got this new girl. She's the best. Everything's going really well with her.
Right.
I'm going to marry this girl now. I was ring shopping for her, but I picked out the perfect one, and now I'm going to give it to her, to this other girl. You'd be like, okay, you at first be hesitant. You'd at first go, okay, you'd want to ask a few more questions. But the thing underneath that is that he could be right. So he could have actually found something out right about this girl that totally meant that he shouldn't pursue her any further. Or he could be fickle and he could be just sort of jumping around and be like super mimetic and not really be able to discern good from bad, but just kind of, go from one high to another. And that does happen. But yeah, I think that if somebody like that were just the answer to the radicalization problem ideologically, or like the ideas that you're comfortable with, I think is a similar one to relationships. So if somebody is really quick to jump from one girl and then now is really excited about this other girl, that guy should probably talk to his pastor. That guy should probably hear from somebody who's been around the block and with some cautions. Maybe this guy would have cautions for him. Maybe his pastor would come to him and say, hey, actually, yeah, no, that seems like you made the right call here. And give, like I said, a few cautions and say, hey, by the way, even though you're right, and even though you've moved over here, there are things that you could do wrong. You could just be, you could run over to this other girl, and do things the wrong way because you're not like doing it in a wise way. So I think that the same thing happens with ideologies or with changes of mind. Things like that can happen fast. And that can be okay. You mentioned in your reply to that tweet that after 2020, it's you would at least be hesitant to, or you'd be skeptical of somebody who hasn't changed their mind, at least on a handful of things since 2020, which I think makes a ton of sense. It may not be that you would totally throw, like, maybe somebody did believe the right thing before, and then 2020 was confirmation of that. There are people like that who just happen to be right all the time, which is great, great but annoying. Those guys who are we're already there. I'm just kidding, but yeah, I think that there are ways of doing it wrong. And in your reply, you said, as long as the Bible is still our standard, as long as we still hold to what we know to be true. And I understand that there are some people who would say, hey, I'm starting to think differently about immigration, and would make a change in that very quickly. And then go talk to their pastor, and their pastor would have bad advice, or their pastor would say, that's not something that doesn't have anything to do with the gospel. So we shouldn't really talk about it or have too many differences on it. But having good Christian leadership that knows how to go there, and can be comfortable with recognizing whether a fast change is good or bad. Fast doesn't have anything to do with whether it's good or bad. You have to evaluate that on other grounds. But yeah, I've changed my mind on many things, and as long as my commitment is to Scripture, and also I'm under authority, I'm being taught, and I can ask questions, and I can, that I think is a really healthy, happy place to be. And to know ahead of time, I am not now, just because I'm right about this and I used to be wrong about it, doesn't mean I'm infallible now. And it also doesn't mean that I should start a podcast. It also doesn't mean that I should start some kind of like Substack where I tell all of my brand new insights that I learned over the past month. Because I think Paul, when he was converted very suddenly. And he went away for 3 years where he was taught by Jesus. So it's like there's a quick conversion. And even Paul, who was very smart and had plenty of biblical knowledge, had to go away for a little bit and sit down. So all of those things are real. All of those kind of complications and all those cautions that can be given can be wise. And it's okay to, as you're thinking things out, be trying to write it out, be trying to think through it out loud. That's fine. So like I said, to wrap up this thought, I wouldn't be immediately skeptical of somebody who changed their mind quickly, but I would have questions, and that's natural, and have questions too. And it's normal to have questions for yourself. So if you change your mind quickly, you should have questions for yourself. You should bump into people who are wiser than you. And at least that's, I think, is a wise practice.
Yeah. I think it's so important too, what you said about being under authority. I think the danger of kind of exploring kind of taboo ideas is, we've seen people kind of go off into a dark corner of the internet and
sure,
really kind of get into some, bad, unbiblical things. But if you're able to do that and to talk about that with your church family, with your pastor, your elders, that hopefully becomes kind of guardrails to keep you from going too far. Yeah. But I think what we find in a lot of churches is anything slightly heterodox, not theologically, but just, that questions, democracy, or the way that power works in the world, the way that we should think about free speech, or things like blasphemy laws and different kind of power dynamics.
Yeah,
it's often met with a kind of like, whoa, we don't talk about that. You're going to dark, dangerous places,
right?
And the church is not a place where those type of conversations are welcome,
right? Well, and the strange thing about all of these changes that have happened, a lot of people have changed their minds since 2020, like you mentioned. A lot of the trouble with that is that people felt personally betrayed by their leadership. That was why they changed their minds on plenty of things, on lots of things. They thought that their teachers were solid, and then all of a sudden, when things get really tough, when the church is being persecuted, they don't really have much of an answer. And so afterward, they find allies on the internet, and they don't find allies in their own church. about things that they know to be true. And so
Mhm.
those new allies then have other thoughts. And so you can either find good allies after that. And so the question of authority is still there. So people can move into where they don't trust their church leadership anymore because of things that happened in 2020 and have happened since. And with this kind of fracturing of things, which is sad. I think guys who want to believe the truth, want to act in accordance with the truth, want to like fight for things that matter. Um, the those things, those guys don't have a lot of leadership right now. We got a kind of weird crisis of leadership, and there's been a huge shuffle in who people listen to. Some like influencers. I mean, like the stuff that comes out of Canon Press has really erupted and has done really well since 2020 and 2021, and there was a huge spike in interest in that stuff. But people here have been saying that for a super long time. So they like Canon Press people, the Canon Press itself wasn't radicalized. It's just that a lot of people started listening because they weren't trusting the people who were immediately in authority over them. And I think
Mhm.
that creates a really, I feel bad, honestly, for the guys who have local leadership that they trusted and don't trust anymore, and then don't know where those guardrails are now. So
Mhm.
like I said, I feel for them. I don't know what what the solution is for them locally. It actually is really hard to find a good church in a lot of places. And so I can't imagine not having that during 2020 and then after 2020 not being able to find it. I think that like crisis of trust um, is part of why people are okay with being radicalized or okay with not being under authority. Because well, my authority
Mhm.
failed me. Why would I go back to them?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think Aaron Renn's three worlds of evangelicalism framework is really helpful. I
Yeah.
think I was talking with some friends the other day just about what it actually means to be red pilled, and the kind of definition we kind of came up with was is someone who knows what time it is. We
Yeah.
know what the current cultural threats are, and there is a willingness to confront them, a
Mhm.
courage to confront them. And I think that transition into negative world, it wasn't overnight, but it feels overnight because I think
Yeah.
we reached a tipping point really quick, and then COVID and everything just accelerated it.
Mhm.
And it's revealed a lot of ways in which um, systems and ministry models that we previously had a ton of faith in
Mhm.
have kind of left us unprepared for the world that we find ourselves in. And I
Yeah.
think that's the challenge for a lot of people in the pews is they recognize that, but a lot of their leaders are so invested in the previous models that there's a rift there, there's a conflict, and so people
Yeah.
start looking for other leaders that are do know what time it is, are red pilled or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've also got a ton of um, sympathy for pastors in that position. It was not an easy. That's not 2020 was not something they train you for in seminary, and so
Right.
I try to have a lot of sympathy there as well. But
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you think about the idea that Christians we need to occupy this kind of middle space, this third way that going yes, there's ditches on the left, but there's also ditches on the right, so we got to find this perfect mean in between the two.
Yeah. Well, I think that like anything, like any metaphor, it breaks down at some point. So I'm not for. Uh, I mean, I've heard Pastor Wilson say like I don't like right wing atrocities. Not a fan of atrocities, however they kind of go, whatever politically they come from. But I also would say like there people talk about balance in a similar way where there are different ways to go wrong, and so like you fall over on left or right. Uh, Luther talked about that. I think there's Chesterton. I think has the most helpful way of talking about balance and as far as like ways to go wrong. And he talks about how there are an infinite number of ways for a man to fall down. And so there's only one for him to stand up straight. So you can fall down at 360 degrees, and there are degrees between those degrees. You can fall down in all kinds of ways. And so being fearful of one particular way of falling down and not another is not healthy. But yeah, we want to be good guys. Like we don't want to just be, yes, there's a sense in which we are to react to bad things, but that badness, as we're reacting, we should be standing straight up and not leaning the opposite direction. And so that's true of people on the right and people on the left, where people think that yes, that everything is this sort of flat line perspective, but the world, not to get into controversial territory, the world is not flat. So the world doesn't go from left to right in one kind of two-dimensional direction. There are lots of ways to fail, where our job is to not do any of those. And that may seem simplistic, but it's like a simplistic metaphor in answer to a simplistic metaphor, if that's permissible.
Yeah. Now, one concept that you have to kind of explain when you start getting into a lot of these ideas that are maybe a little bit outside of the accepted is the concept of the Overton window. Can you explain what that is and how maybe we can talk about how Christians should think about that?
Yeah. Well, the Overton window is just it's another metaphor for the acceptable range of opinion. Tom Woods talks about the 3x5 card of acceptable opinion, which is much smaller than a window. And so Tom Woods talks about tearing up the 3x5 card of acceptable opinion. And so acceptable opinion is something that is dictated by the way things are in the world. So it's dictated by what's acceptable to a particular generation or particular time. So when the Overton window moves, that is a change in what is acceptable or what is polite to be talked about in public. And so as things change, and where you can talk about, where the Overton window actually also applies to subcultures. So it used to be that even in right-wing, in conservative circles, you couldn't talk about immigration in polite company. But since Trump, that's right now, and since Trump and right now especially, that is, we can all say that is one of, if not the biggest, most pressing issue in America. And so as the Overton window shifts, it can shift in a positive. Again, we're just talking about spatial metaphors now. But it can shift in a positive direction, or it can shift in a negative direction. And if it moves, then the Overton window is on the move. So if the Overton window is set in a spot for a long time, then it's really unlikely that it's going to move again soon. But once it starts moving, it keeps moving, and it can accelerate, or it can keep moving in the same direction. But I understand, like, people are understandably bothered when the Overton window does move, but the Overton window isn't our standard. It may be a standard in how we present things, and it may be a standard in how we are trying to get people on board, or helping people understand who are still within that window space. But it shouldn't determine how we think, and it shouldn't determine what we think is true. And I guess it just depends on how wide you want to say the Overton window is. Like, the Overton window of planet Earth is going to be different from the Overton window of your local church or of any particular online community. But yeah, that's the concept, and I think it's a helpful one. Again, like I said, with any metaphor, it is limited.
Yeah, it's one of those things too, where I think just as we're, Christians need to be careful not to think that the Overton window aligns perfectly with Scripture. Like, there are plenty of things outside the Overton window that are perfectly biblical. Like, it may be outside the Overton window to, say that, monarchy is a preferable system of government to democracy. Okay, but that's not scriptural. You can
Yeah.
We can talk about that idea, and be a little transgressive talking about it,
Mhm.
without actually sinning.
Right.
On the you know, flip side of that, there's plenty of stuff within the Overton that is perfectly, that is sinful. I think
Yeah.
of, you know, gay weddings and stuff. We
Right.
tend to give that sort of thing more deference than we
Mhm.
would,
Yeah.
and we treat sins within the Overton window differently than we would treat sins outside the Overton. I think
Yeah.
a good example of that is with Alistair Begg's recent
Right.
comments about, advising a grandmother to attend uh,
Yeah.
the
A
grandson's
trans wedding. Yeah.
trans
Right.
wedding or something.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
we wouldn't give that same advice to a sin that is outside of the Overton
Right.
window. And so,
Yeah. And if you get stuck in the Overton window, that means you're stuck in the present. You if as soon as you start to read anybody outside of the Overton window, that typically means reading somebody outside of your century, or
mhm,
even older. And so, if you get more comfortable with people outside of the Overton window, that typically is going to look like reading older books, or at least being comfortable with older ideas. And not every old idea is good. Not every old idea is bad. We have to actually sort through things. But people can be. Chesterton talked about how we treat the past. A lot of people run away from the past. They move away from it because they're intimidated by it, and they're intimidated by great men.
mhm,
So that people will, the reason people take down statues is because they recognize that they are inferior to those great men. And it's a terrifying concept for them to look at people who had fewer resources than they did, and who did many greater things. That's a scary thing. But yeah, so a easy way to understand whether you're being faithful and not being even as you're stepping outside of the Overton window, is to find people who were faithful and maybe thought differently than you. You mentioned earlier that democracy and equality, those are a couple of my more recent videos. I just recently reread Screwtape Proposes a Toast. And there's a huge, like 4 or 5 paragraph section in there about how democracy is used as an incantation, as just a way of getting people to think, getting people to sort of justify their own envy. And so this democracy and equality work
hmm,
together to make people justify their own envy. So it starts with envy. It starts with somebody. I see somebody who's performing better than me, and that's a sin. I start with a sin, and then he talks about you have to. This is Screwtape talking. You have to move from this sin into a principle that your patient is willing to defend. So you go start with envy, and then now it's not just I want what he has, or he's done better than me, therefore I want him to either be poor or dead, right?
mhm,
That's private. And then if you turn it into a principle, then it starts to look like humanity, or like this society that we live in is designed to uh, reward the rich and punish the poor and all this kind of stuff. So this envy turns into something that sounds really high minded, and sounds like something that this person would be willing, again, to put on a political, like on their political platform. Um, and again, that's C.S. Lewis. That's C.S. Lewis talking. So, but why I bring that up is that it's okay to think that way. And you can actually go back and think, well, was C.S. Lewis a faithful Christian who loved God? And do I admire him for many of the other things I've read? Yes. And so once he gets to this, I'll still be evaluating it based on scripture. I'll still be like bringing things to my elders or talking to people I trust. But I'm not crazy. And
mhm.
if I start to have doubts about at least the way democracy is talked about, or at least the way equality is talked about now, then I can start to, if I'm informed by Lewis, and if I'm holding on to, again, a guy that I know is a good, faithful Christian who's worth emulating, then I'm on a pretty good track. I'm doing okay. And if most of my influences, if I'm reading mostly people who weren't good Christians or weren't good people, or had lots of sort of awful things that they did or thought or said, then yeah, I'm probably on a bad track. But I was encouraged after having, because I read Screwtape Proposals of Toast, I think when I was in high school, and then only recently reread it for the first time since then. But was encouraged that, hey, this talk about democracy, equality, well, I'm not off the reservation. I didn't step off totally, and I at least felt some camaraderie with a great Christian, and that's a good feeling to have, even as it might seem radical to people now. It might be outside of the Overton window. It might, and even though my conversion to that might have happened quickly, I'm still bringing in and trying to take in the wisdom of other people as I'm changing.
Yeah, that's good. Paul tells us not to be conformed to the world. We're to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. What are some kind of ways that we can kind of like, I don't know, maybe self-diagnose or self-diagnostic, run some self-diagnostics on ourselves to see where are we, we're just believing kind of things that we've always grown up with that may or may not be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing as people might be feeling like they're getting radicalized, or as people are learning a bunch of new things, one thing that needs to go along with that is being fun to be around. So if you are getting radicalized, or if you are like, and I'm not using that as a put down, by the way, but if you're moving in a like more, if you're believing a bunch of things you didn't used to believe, you're changing your mind about a bunch of stuff, are you angry about it? Like, are you frustrated? Are you still able to honor your father and mother? Or are you still able to like love your family? Are you still able to be patient with everybody, even as they may disagree with you, or you may be having to bring people along? And if all of that stuff, if you're right about a bunch of stuff now, it, like I said earlier, it still doesn't mean that you are qualified to speak on it. And I take that as I try to walk with some amount of trepidation as I'm talking about stuff, because again, I'm relatively new to some of this. I had radical opinions before 2020 on lots of things. I've changed, and I've also changed on some things. But yeah, are you fun to be around? There's a the great Edwin Friedman, who I adore, talked about how you can gauge the anxiety level of any society or group or church or family based on whether the families or that group's level of playfulness. So he sees playfulness and anxiety as the kind of seesaw effect, where as one goes up, the other goes down. And so if you can be playful, even as you're talking about things you care a lot about and think really matter, then you're probably in a healthier spot. He also talks about how people tend to think that seriousness is better than playfulness. Not necessarily. And it may not, you may not, just because you're dealing with things that matter doesn't mean that you can't be playful, and doesn't mean that you can't be, like I said, fun to be around. If somebody gets you on a topic that if you are at a party and everybody knows, don't bring up X around him because it's going to get ugly, then you're probably not doing okay. You're not doing fine. And you sometimes can't know that, because you start to realize, nobody wants to talk to me about immigration anymore. Nobody wants to talk to me about democracy anymore, because I'm constantly bringing it up and I'm being no fun about it. But if you're joking, if you like talking about this and you enjoy the people around you, even as they think differently than you, then you're much more attractive, and there are multiple perspectives to this. So like you're personally in a good spot. God is more pleased with that than if you're sitting there seething about everything that's going wrong. And it's much more attractive. It wins people much more. This is true of if somebody becomes a Calvinist, right? So if somebody becomes a Calvinist and they're really annoying about it, then like, I don't want to talk to that guy. And I believe in Calvinism. I'll sign off on all the points, but I don't want to talk to him, even if I agree with him. And so that can happen with anybody speaking truth. It can happen with anybody speaking lies. It can, but as I think it's tough. It's so hard to see yourself. It's so hard to see. I think Doug's talked about like the back of your own head, and you can't really do that unless you're around people and you have people who you trust and who trust you and who would come to you and say like, hey, have you noticed that people don't want to talk to you when you go out? Or have you noticed that as you're that you tend to go off on tangents, or you tend to go off on some kind of 3-hour monologue every time somebody brings up a topic? That's a problem. And not that talking a lot is a bad thing. I'm talking a lot right now, but if you enjoy talking about this stuff, you don't have to be angry, and because like if you believe the truth, why would you and you want other people to believe the truth, why would you present it in the way that is the least attractive? And right. why would the truth make you miserable? Why would believing something that is the way things are actually happening make you like God knows all the truth. God knows everything and he's red pilled on everything. He's well aware of all the things that are going wrong. And God does get angry, and we should get angry. It's not a question of whether anger is good or bad, but the question is kindness and goodness and fun. And so fun, I think is that may be a kind of lame answer to your question about how to self-diagnose, but are you any fun to be around? I guess would be my big question.
No, that's good. My pastor way back when all of the CRT was the big issue, asked me to give do a 2-week equipping class on critical theory and explain that. And, inside I'd been so concerned about this for years. I'd become that guy that, he's always going on about this,
yeah.
But not in an angry, we've got to, the sky's falling kind of way, but people wanted to listen. I was going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And he asked me to give this talk and everything. And there was someone in the Q&A part of it spoke up at the end and was just like so like passionate, like, no, they're coming into our schools. They're trying to indoctrinate our kids. We got to do something. And she was like frustrated with me that I wasn't feeling it as passionately.
Right.
And, I kind of explained, we've got to try and persuade people and all that. But I went and talked to her afterwards and I was like, look, I am just as concerned as you, if not more.
Yeah. Right.
But presenting something in a dispassionate, with a dispassionate demeanor is more persuasive to people who are skeptical. Like, I don't know what this is. This seems like, what is this? Is this a racist thing?
Sure. And
so the more you can present these ideas that, these concerns that you have in a way that is secure in the sovereignty of God.
Right.
Like God knows what's going on. God has, opened my eyes to this stuff for a reason. I'm going to use it however he wants to, and just trust that he's gonna do. It's not my job to make sure my church doesn't go woke.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to pray for that. I'm going to work to that end, but I'm not going to bear the weight of that because that makes you really unhinged and kind of bull in a china shop, and no one's going to listen to you.
Well, like I like to use the example of Robin Hood. So Robin Hood is what's really attractive about the great Michael Curtiz did a Robin Hood movie back in the day. And what's attractive, and obviously the stories, and you read Roger Lancelyn Green, you can read Howard Pyle, but like what's attractive about Robin Hood is the spirit. There's a real like fun fighting spirit. And there are no scenes in any of the books or in the great Michael Curtiz movie where everybody's sitting around going, they're stealing from the citizens. And like nobody's like furrow browed, like tense neck, Like there aren't a lot of scenes like that, even as all of this evil is happening around them. They're having to live in the woods. Like these people are really destitute. They're all like the leaders are awful. Everything's really bad. People are like, all the good guys are living out in the woods and they got to go fight in secret, but they're having fun and they like quip, it's, and that's the kind of fighting that is really attractive. And so as if Robin Hood is red pilled to how bad things are, he's not mad, or he's not, maybe I shouldn't say mad, but he's not unbearable. It's a good, fun fighting spirit. It's attractive. We like that character, but it's also, it makes you less miserable. It makes you like, why in the world if you had a choice, you actually do have a choice between whether you act like somber and solemn and all this kind of stuff, or act like Robin Hood. But why choose? Why choose the somber, solemn way? If that Robin Hood's fighting is much more effective than a kind of sullen, like Eeyore kind of fighting. And like, and it's also, it's effective and it's fun. It's better for you. It's better for your team. And so, yeah, I'll just say we should fight like Robin Hood, because, and knowing the truth shouldn't stop us from being that way. It shouldn't slow down from being fun.
Yeah. And in a time of rapid change, remember that a lot of us are new to these ideas or new to these concerns as well. And we need to have grace on people who just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And so if we look at people that are, still happily, deluding themselves that we're still a neutral world, and well, let's just, all these mystery models have worked for years. Let's keep going. That was me.
Sure.
5 years ago. So I need to have grace, and some people take longer to kind of awaken to stuff, and we need to kind of hold out the branch to kind of help them get to where we're at, and not so dogmatic, and just consider them an enemy because they haven't seen it yet.
Right. And that's why it's actually much more healthy to, if you're going to have barbs, if you're going to make fun of somebody, make fun of the leaders who should know better, and the people who are following along and are trying to be faithful or trying to do the right thing, and might like that. That's why Alistair Begg is actually a good target, and not the kindly grandmother who comes and says, I don't really know what to do. The kindly grandmother is actually like wiser than Alistair Begg is in this whole situation, because she has a question about it and she wants to know what the right thing to do is. She's personally bothered. And so it's good to go after Alistair Begg in this situation, because he should know better and he should be more faithful about this. And the people who are going along with it, like I can be patient with that. And we can enjoy talking to those people as they come along. And sometimes our leaders do fail us. We talked about that with 2020. Our leaders can fail us. And so we shouldn't be necessarily as disappointed or as angry with the people who don't quite understand the ways in which they're being failed, because that's part of the failure, that they don't see it, is that they're being failed. And yes, they are being deceived, and that is a sin. But we have to, it is okay to be patient.
Yeah. So you're a content creator. How, I feel like that's such a need in kind of the conservative space, where it does lend itself more towards 3-hour streams and such. What are, how should conservatives be thinking about media right now? Is it a tool that we need to be using differently?
Differently than how we're doing it, or how other people do it?
Yeah, and then how we've done it in the past, or how we're currently doing it.
Yeah, it's super interesting. We're in a time where the majority of the stuff that people are consuming, I think there's a lot of leftover sort of traction where people tend to think like, if you want to make culture, the best way to do that is to work your way up in television, or to work your way up in movies and that kind of thing. And that there's a huge place for that, and we are hugely influenced by that. But there's such a lower barrier to entry now to be able to influence people's opinions and influence people's thoughts. And so I'm pleased, honestly, with how people are structured, how people are taking advantage of that bottom rung being lower now. I think that even since 2020, there's probably been a bit of find the right word for it, a similar kind of crisis of leadership, not like the one that would happen during 2020. So I think that during 2020, people moved away from some of the more normie way of thinking about things into people who were red pilled or people who understood what was going on and could say something. I think that 2024 is going to be such an interesting time because I think that many of the people that helped us through 2020, I don't know. Now we're going to figure out how many of those people can help us to the next step. Because at the time, it was enough to be against vaccine mandates and that kind of stuff. Okay, well, what's the next step? What's the next play? And so now it's a question of how are those people who gained the trust during the last few years going to handle the next rush of the next wave, the next rush of bad stuff. And I think that we've already, like, some of the people, like I said, who helped us through 2020 have continued to help us now in 2024. I right now, I think it'll be a fascinating thing to see who sticks around and who is continuing to be helpful. And I think the stuff that we do at Canon, why I'm pleased to be working here at Canon and be able to do stuff here is that Canon has been saying the same things for decades at this point. And so we didn't just pivot to talking about politics and religion and rebellion and resistance and all this, like the Protestant resistance theory. That wasn't something that Canon decided to start talking about when it became a hot topic. We were just sort of, it's like Canon's like been this kind of consistent radio signal that's just been kind of beaming the same stuff for decades. And then people started tuning into it and realizing, oh wow, there's all this amazing stuff. And that is such a robust thing to get involved with. Anybody who shifted during that time is on, I think, at least a little bit less sure footing. And anybody who's new to it is, I don't know. That's your question's a really good one, and I hope I'm answering it. The strategic advantage of content right now is, yes, it's easier to get involved in to get into people's feeds than it would have been if everybody was on TV and everybody had to figure out how to get print a newspaper and mail it out to everybody. But personality, it's so personal, and the people who helped us are those people going to be able to. I think that there are a handful. I'm pleased, like I said, to be working at a place where I think we will be able to consistently and continue to help people during 2024. If I were a content creator anywhere else or doing anything else, that would be, and it still is, the number one question on my mind. So I know that I eventually learned a bunch of lessons from 2020, right? 2020, it may have taken some time, but I learned them. Now, am I better prepared now? And am I ahead of the game such that 2024 and on, I'll be able to consistently help people?
Yeah.
We'll see. Tune into the Wade Show with Wade to find out.
Well, I think that's the big question, and the big challenge and opportunity before us is, as we have transitioned into negative world, and we've been, we're 4 years out from 2020, and we kind of see, we have a better understanding of kind of the new lay of the land. Like, okay, what are the new ministry models that are needed for this cultural moment? What are the, how should we think about, evangelism differently? How should we think about, what it looks like to be a, conservative? What does it look like to be involved in politics in this new era? And I think, the voices that can provide those kind of frameworks, those models, that path forward, really stand to be very influential in the coming years.
Absolutely. And
it's an exciting space to be in at this moment.
Absolutely. And I think that the one heartening thing, what I love that they're doing at the Blaze, I love what they're doing over there. I think that they've tried to shift in a lot of really important big ways into making sure that they're the home of really right-wing thinking, and being able to have like Matt Peterson being there, Aaron McIntyre, we talked about him. I think they've just built a really cool team, such that yes, they were able to help. The same company was doing good work in 2020, and then now in 2024, I think that they've been girding themselves up in a way, and I hope that other people have used this time in a similar way. And I'm optimistic, honestly, that we do have as much as we do. Obviously, there's a lot more work to do. We still don't, like, the right is still not really in power. Christians are not in power. We don't have the levers of the world to be able to determine things, but we are in a place where we can at least understand what's going on, and hopefully put up some kind of fight.
Yeah. Well, I like to end my show with something that's giving you hope right now. Do you have any white pills for us?
White pills right now. I think, yeah, I probably would just continue on with my thought that I had just there. I think that people are starting to understand things, and that really pleases me. What I love doing is being able to I love, like I said, what's going on at the Blaze. I love what's going on at Canon Press. I love the work that you're doing. I love honestly, we've got a good team here. We don't have power, right? We don't have cultural political power in the same way that we would like to, but we've got good people, and our team is really strong. And so when I look around and I see people saying true things, and I'm learning a ton of things from other folks, we've got good guys, and it seems like the people who are involved in the movement now are much more concerned with their great grandparents or great grandkids' lives than the right wing movement was even 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And that gives me a lot of hope. I think we've got a good team. I think we're headed in the right direction. We'll just see. This year is going to be wild, and I'm pleased to know that there are some people who've learned the lessons of 2020, learned the lessons of this weird lull, this weird Biden administration lull. Obviously, it's strange to call it a lull with all the craziness, but I think we're going in. I think we're in a good spot going into this year, and we'll see if anybody's watching this in January of 2025, and I'm totally wrong and we totally failed. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I said the other day that I think 2020 was a big black pill. I'm optimistic that 2024 is going to be a big white pill. Yeah. And I think the stuff we're seeing down there on the border with Governor Abbott, finally standing up and saying, no, we're going to protect our border.
Right.
More of that, please. Let's keep going in that direction.
Yeah. Speaking of Overton window, gosh, man, like that's the kind of thing that didn't happen. And the fact that you
couldn't even say that 4 years ago.
Yeah. And being able to, people picking up on that is a viable strategy, that like resistance at the state level is a viable strategy, isn't some kind of throwback, that somebody can defy some kind of federal order. That's great. We know what's in our tool belt, and that I am heartened. Go Greg Abbott, go Texas. I will, like I said, on my show, I'd be happy to send anything from my bunker that I can mail.
Love it. All right, Wade, where can people find The Wade Show? Wade
Show is on YouTube. So if you search Wade Show, it should pop up. It's The Wade Show with Wade. Try to do two videos a week, like I said. And I hope people come check it out. We also put it on Canon Plus. And that's, so Canon Plus is our streaming service. We have audiobooks, we have videos, we have kids shows. We try to make it a real hub for entertainment, as well as the edification of audiobooks, sermons, we're really proud of Canon Plus. I think 2024 is going to be an even bigger year where we're going to be able to give folks even more bang for their buck.
Yeah, and I'll just give a free endorsement there. We're subscribers of Canon Plus, and just a ton of great content that my whole family enjoys. So,
well, thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Glad you enjoy it.
All right, thanks, Wade. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. Big thanks to Wade Stotts for joining me for this conversation. If you're not subscribed to the Wade Show, go ahead and do that now. It's a great show. You're really going to enjoy it. If you're not following Wade on Twitter, he's a great follow there as well. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future content. And if you're listening to the audio, ratings and reviews over at Apple Podcasts or Spotify are really helpful to getting the show out to more people. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.